Hello, it's PSYCHOCORE, the Psychology of Irresistible Attraction When Looks Don't Matter, based on Carl Jung. Before you settle in, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, only if you like what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to see who's joining us from around the world. Let's begin with the wound you rarely dare to touch. That invisible ache you disguise during the day, but that follows you in silence at night. It comes when the lights are out and the noise of the world fades, leaving you alone with the one critic you cannot escape, yourself. You ask, why does real attraction elude me? You polish your appearance, rehearse gestures before the mirror, perfect your smile, yet something remains absent. No designer suit, no learned phrase, no calculated glance can fill that void, because magnetism is not external. Magnetism emerges from the depths, and here lies the most disturbing truth. Most people live believing charisma is sculpted from the body, from fashionable clothes, from angles and poses. Yet Carl Jung warned of something darker. What you refuse to acknowledge within yourself will dominate you from the shadows. Attraction never wears a mask. It is your unconscious reaching into the world. Ask yourself, how often have you buried your most primal instincts? How often have you hidden anger, lust, despair under a mask of politeness? You think concealing these impulses makes you more acceptable, more lovable, but repression does not vanish. It leaks. Every fragment you exile returns as a silent repellent. The body smiles, but the energy betrays. Others feel it. They don't know why, but something in you seems incomplete, artificial, fragmented. You appear polished yet strangely hollow. This is why practice charm rarely works, because people do not respond to polish, they respond to presence. And presence cannot be fabricated. It is born from confronting the very parts you fear to reveal. I'm not speaking of raw exhibitionism, not of exposing your wounds for sympathy. I'm speaking of integration, of owning your shadow until it bends into strength. When you stop running from yourself, you stop performing. The need to be approved dissolves. What remains is an energy that unsettles and fascinates, a quiet gravity. Think about the last time someone captivated you without saying a word. Was it their clothes, their haircut, or was it something harder to name? A strange certainty radiating from them, an aura impossible to copy. That was not surface beauty. That was an unconscious in harmony with itself. That was presence. Presence cuts deeper than any word because it is not broadcast through the mouth but through the silence between breaths. Jung understood this as the collision of unconscious fields. Two psyches meet before two bodies touch. If your unconscious is fragmented, if your desires remain exiled, the connection collapses before it begins. But if your psyche is united, your very gaze becomes a force. Watch the world around you. You'll see the struggle everywhere. Most people project themselves through image, through fashion, through social media, through rehearsed confidence, because in stillness they feel invisible, but then someone enters a room and the atmosphere shifts. They are not louder, they are not dressed more extravagantly, yet people turn their heads. That is magnetism. That is the weight of a psyche not divided. Magnetism cannot be purchased, rehearsed, or downloaded from a list of tricks. It must be forged in the dark. Those who run from their desires are enslaved by them. Those who contain their fire radiate it without needing to release it. Like a volcano that doesn't erupt but shakes the ground beneath your feet. This is why silence can feel unbearable. Inexperienced souls rush to fill it with chatter, with gestures, with anything to dissolve the tension, but when silence is mastered, it becomes devastating. Because silence charged with integrated desire speaks louder than performance. The one who remains calm in chaos radiates something unexplainable: safety, authority, gravity. This is not rehearsed confidence and is visceral certainty. Jung named this individuation, the process of uniting every fragment of the self, including the rejected, until nothing is disowned. A complete being does not need to impress, because nothing is missing. And when someone needs nothing from you, attraction becomes terrifying. Because you cannot manipulate them, cannot buy them, cannot seduce them with shallow tricks. Their very independence awakens obsession. Understand this paradox, true magnetism frightens. It is not the comforting glow of politeness. It is the disturbing pull of authenticity. The disturbing always lingers longer than the pleasant. Pleasantness is forgotten. Disturbance becomes memory. But here lies the deeper power few dare to grasp. Integrating your shadow not only creates sexual magnetism, it transforms others. Jung noted that when a strong unconscious meets a weak one, the strong will always dominate. Your presence does not just seduce, it reshapes. People leave changed, though they cannot explain how. They feel as though a hidden part of themselves was touched. This is not persuasion, it is contagion. Energy transmitting through silence, through gaze, through the invisible. And this is why true magnetism does not merely conquer bodies, it elevates souls. Yet beware, not everyone can endure it. Some flee, sensing too much truth. For authenticity confronts falseness like a mirror, exposing weakness. But those who remain, those who do not run, transform. And that transformation is deeper than attraction. It is awakening. Consider history. The figures who redefined eras were rarely the most beautiful or the most eloquent. What set them apart was an indivisible unconscious, an aura leaving an imprint on everyone they touched. Magnetism is that invisible mark, not on flesh but on psyche, not in applause but in memory. True seduction never dies because it embeds itself in the soul. This is where the danger emerges. Once you realize your power lies not in what you display but in what you contain, the temptation to manipulate arises. Shadow energy misused becomes destruction. Jung warned of this. A repressed unconscious does not vanish. It erupts as chaos. That is why the real work is purification, not performance. To weld light and darkness until your presence ceases to be a weapon and becomes creation. Forget facades, forget borrowed techniques. Work with the one thing no one can copy, your integrated psyche. That is magnetism, that is sexual power. That is why your silence can thunder and your gaze can ignite. And once you master this, conquest becomes irrelevant. You need not chase, the world bends of its own. Take a breath. Let the idea sink in. If you've listened this far, it means something in you already knew these truths but never saw them spoken so directly. Attraction is not built in the mirror, it is cultivated in silence. And silence is not emptiness, silence is charged presence. Ask yourself honestly, can you tolerate your own company? Can you sit alone without distraction, without reaching for the phone, the screen, the noise? Because if you cannot stand yourself, neither will anyone else. The first test of magnetism is whether your own presence nourishes you or devours you. If you cannot bear your solitude, you will always beg for others to fill it, and begging never attracts. True magnetism never begs. The paradox is clear. The more you contain your fire, the more it radiates. Not because you smother it, but because you hold it without spilling. Energy retained creates tension. Tension is what ignites fascination. Think of awkward silence, the moment where your hands twitch, your mouth wants to speak just to dissolve the pressure. Now imagine that silence in the hands of one who has mastered themselves. Suddenly the same stillness becomes unbearable for others, not because it is empty, but because it is charged. That charge is magnetism. A silence so heavy it forces others to reveal themselves. Ask, what does someone radiate who can remain calm in chaos? Not the shallow confidence of memorized lines, but the unshakable certainty of a soul reconciled with its darkness. That kind of presence anchors rooms, it becomes gravitational. Jung's word for this was individuation, the union of shadow and light. A psyche integrated no longer leaks insecurity. Instead, it emanates wholeness. A complete being has nothing to prove, and that absence of need is what makes them untouchable. What happens when someone wants nothing from you? when their eyes carry desire but not hunger, when they can live with or without you. That is when attraction turns into obsession, because you sense they cannot be manipulated, they cannot be owned. And the human mind craves what it cannot control. Understand, this is why authentic magnetism unsettles. It is not polite, it is not pleasing, it is frightening, because it is independent. In a world built on the economy of approval, likes, applause, validation, the one who requires none becomes dangerous. Dangerous not because they harm, but because they expose. When you meet such a person, it feels like facing a mirror that reveals everything you repress. This is why true magnetism disturbs more than it comforts. And disturbance attracts more than beauty ever could. Beauty pleases, disturbance transforms. But attraction taken to its deepest level goes further still. Magnetism is not only a tool for desire, it is a force of transformation. Jung wrote that when two unconscious fields collide, the stronger always shapes the weaker. This means your presence does not just draw, it molds. Those who step into your field do not leave the same. They carry an imprint, often without knowing why. Think of encounters that changed you forever. Maybe a stranger you met once, yet you remember their eyes years later. Maybe a teacher who spoke little, but whose presence left a scar on your psyche. That is the essence of magnetism. Not seduction for consumption, but energy that reconfigures. This is why the work is sacred. Because the same force that elevates can also corrupt. A fragmented shadow used unconsciously becomes manipulation. And manipulation always collapses in the end because false presence cannot hold weight. Only integrated energy endures. So the true task is purification. Not repression, not denial, not acting righteous. Purification means taking every disowned piece of yourself, rage, lust, envy, terror, and holding it until it no longer controls you. You don't kill it. You don't erase it. You seat it at the table of your being. And when every guest is seated, the psyche becomes whole. That wholeness is what radiates. This is why gimmicks never work. Tricks may gain attention for a moment, but they collapse under the weight of time. Wholeness never collapses, wholeness expands, and expansion is what pulls people in like a gravitational field. Picture this. Two people walk into a room. One speaks loudly, gestures dramatically, demands notice. The other says nothing, yet every head turns. Why? Because one is performing, the other simply is. The performer drains energy, the complete person generates it. Now understand the risk. Once you awaken this energy, there is no return. Your glance alone can ignite the forbidden in others. Your silence can turn into thunder. And some will fear you for it, because your very existence will remind them of what they have not faced in themselves. But here is the final paradox. Those who fear you most are also those most drawn to you, because the unconscious longs for integration, and your presence becomes the doorway. Some will flee unable to bear it, but those who remain will transform. And transformation is the highest form of attraction. Think of it this way: beauty fades, bodies age, styles pass. But psychological energy does not decay. Whoever masters their energy masters attraction beyond time. This is why certain figures remain unforgettable decades after their death, because their magnetism was never physical. It was psychic. So stop asking, how can I look better, sound smoother, impress more? These questions belong to the fragmented self. The real question is, can I unite my shadow with my light? Can I become whole enough that my silence carries more weight than another's words? Magnetism is not disguise, it is not performance. It is alchemy, the turning of shadow into fire, and alchemy demands courage. Because you must confront what you've run from your whole life. But know this, once you do, the world shifts. People respond differently even if you say nothing. Their bodies lean, their eyes search, their souls feel the gravitational field of wholeness. And you will know, this cannot be faked. because it is born not from display but from containment. Now let me ask you, are you willing to live with so much authenticity that your very presence unsettles the false? Are you prepared to be feared as much as you are desired? Because that is the cost of real magnetism. Not everyone will applaud you. Some will try to diminish you, to escape you, to attack you, because your existence threatens their illusions. But those who remain are the ones ready to transform with you. And that is the highest gift attraction can give, not conquest, but awakening. If you felt a shiver during these words, it is not coincidence. It is your unconscious recognizing its own truth. You already knew this, but naming it aloud calls it into being. Now you cannot go back, so don't think of magnetism as a trick to master. Think of it as a force to become. When your psyche is no longer divided, you will no longer seek to impress. You will no longer chase. You will simply exist and the world will rearrange around you. This is the final revelation. True attraction is not about hunting bodies. It is about elevating souls. And when you embody this, you become unforgettable. Now imagine the moment after all masks fall. No strategies, no rehearsals, no desperate need to prove anything. You simply walk into a space silent and yet the atmosphere bends. People don't know why, but they feel it. They sense a tension in the air, a current that cannot be traced to your clothes, your posture, or your words. That current is you, the unified psyche. Magnetism at its peak is not about being liked. It is about being undeniable. Liking is fragile, it rises and falls with taste. But being undeniable means your presence cannot be ignored. Even those who resist still feel you. They may not admit it, they may fight it, but their unconscious bends to your gravity. And this is why the journey toward true attraction is not glamorous. It is not a checklist of tricks. It is the discipline of sitting with your rage until it no longer owns you. It is the courage of meeting your shame without running. It is the patience of holding your lust, your envy, your wounds, until they transform from enemies into allies. This inner alchemy does not decorate the surface, it rewires the core. When that rewiring happens, you notice a shift. You stop seeking validation. You stop trying to engineer reactions. You cease rehearsing lines before the mirror, because you know the energy you radiate is louder than anything you can say. Words may decorate, but energy convinces. This is why some people feel unforgettable after one encounter. They don't leave behind a phrase or a gesture. They leave behind an imprint as if part of them stayed in you. That is the mark of shadow transformed into light. But let's not romanticize too much. The path is dangerous, because with power comes temptation. To use presence not as elevation but as manipulation, to feed ego instead of essence. Many fall here, mistaking control for mastery, but manipulation corrodes. It drains the energy it tries to exploit. Authentic magnetism, by contrast, generates energy. It nourishes not only you but those around you. So how do you keep your presence pure? By constant confrontation with your own truth, by refusing to exile parts of yourself, by returning again and again to the mirror you'd rather avoid. Jung insisted that integration is lifelong, not a one-time ritual, but an endless process of facing the shadow. And every time you face it, you grow heavier with authenticity. This heaviness is not a burden, it is weight. And weight is what makes others feel safe, because the world is full of hollow performances, of people who collapse under pressure. The one who holds their fire, who carries their darkness without spilling it, becomes unshakable. That unshakable quality is irresistible. Now think of silence again. The silence of someone incomplete is empty, awkward, suffocating. The silence of someone whole is alive, electric, magnetic. In that silence, others reveal themselves because they cannot escape the tension. They confess, they unfold, they are pulled into orbit. And you remain still. That stillness is more lethal than any line of seduction. This is why Jung called individuation both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it strips illusions, liberating because it ends the endless chase. Once you integrate, you no longer need to chase bodies, applause, or validation. You become the still point around which others revolve. And yet this is the reason authentic magnetism is feared. People will sense you do not need them. That you cannot be manipulated, bought, or seduced with tricks. Your very independence feels like a threat in a world addicted to dependence. Many will run, and that is natural, because not everyone is ready to confront themselves through you. But those who remain, those who cannot look away, will change. They will not just feel attraction, they will feel awakened. Your presence will act like fire to their unconscious, forcing hidden parts into the light. Some will call it obsession, others will call it love. But what it truly is transformation. Remember this, attraction fades when it is only flesh. But when it touches the unconscious, it endures. This is why decades can pass, and yet one glance, one encounter, one presence remains unforgettable. Not because of beauty, not because of charm, but because it marked the soul. And so the question returns to you. Are you willing to carry such truth? Are you willing to radiate so much authenticity that comfort collapses around you? Because authenticity is rarely applauded. It is unsettling. It is feared. And yet, it is the only path to magnetism that does not decay. Look at history again. The ones remembered, the visionaries, the leaders, the lovers who left legends, did not win because of appearance. They won because their psyche was indivisible. Their energy was heavy, undeniable. And people surrendered to that weight. Now let's return to you. If you close this message and step into your day unchanged, nothing shifts. But if you pause, even for a moment, and let these words sink deeper than thought, you will feel something stir. That stirring is not from me, it is from you, from the unconscious that has waited for permission to rise. So here is the invitation. Stop pretending, stop running, stop rehearsing. Begin the work. Sit in silence with the parts you hate. Hold them until they no longer frighten you. Integrate them until they serve you. Then walk into the world not as a performance, but as a force. From that moment, attraction ceases to be a goal. It becomes a byproduct. You no longer chase. The world surrenders. And if you doubt this, test it. Walk into a room without effort, without performance, and watch. Watch how eyes find you. Watch how conversations bend toward you. Watch how silence works in your favor. That is not magic, that is integration. Now before we end, let me leave you with this image. Picture yourself standing in absolute stillness. You say nothing, you do nothing. Yet those around you lean closer, restless, searching for something in you they cannot name. That invisible pull is not trickery, it is not charm. It is your shadow transformed into fire, and once you taste it, you will never return to pretending. Because pretending is exhausting, being is effortless. So I will not say goodbye. Goodbye feels too small after this. Instead, I'll say this. Step back into your world and observe. Notice the shift. Notice how your very silence changes the room. That is magnetism. That is power. That is you finally awake. See you in the next depth. And if these words resonated, write in the comments what rose inside you while listening. Not a perfect phrase, just the truth. Because the truth is the only language magnetism understands. If you enjoyed this video, please support the channel, like, share, and subscribe. Please leave a comment telling us what you think of this video.